All right, well, my name's Alex Freund.
Oh, go ahead. That's fine. I mean, it's usually better if I introduce you, Alex. I didn't know. I'm Jared. But anyway. Well, listen, we had a larger panel today. We're supposed to have more folks here, but I think they all got sidetracked by the first room down there in the marketing. This is a common marketing. People sometimes don't know why they draw to marketing, but if you're a business owner and you're involved with making decisions on the infrastructure and IT infrastructure of your business, and you're looking to understand more about what cloud is, what it means to you, and whether these services are of use to you, this is a good session. This is a session for you. So with that, I just want to introduce everyone here. My name is Derek Wagner, for those of you who don't know me. I run the yacht services business with MTN Satellite Communication, excuse me, and also reside on the board of the USSA, and hence I'm helping to moderate this session here with my colleague Karen Blake, who is the Vice President of Palladium Technologies, and is also the membership chair for the USSA. Today, joining us and who are our experts are Alex Freund, who is the President and CIO of IT, who is a technology company and consultancy company here in South Florida. Alex has worked with numerous Fortune 500 companies and has been doing this for over 30 years, bringing technology solutions to small to medium businesses in the South Florida area. And so he's going to be here to really present and define what cloud services are, what they mean to us, and what things to look for and/or look at how to evaluate whether these things are services that you can benefit from or you should stay away from, depending on the type of business that you have and what you're looking to do. So, also we have Kais Hassan here, who is one of my colleagues and is the principal technology architect at MTN, and has over 25 years of experience in the industry, over 20 years with experience with MTN in and around the parent companies that MTN has had. So one way or another has been involved, and he's here to bring you and talk about experiences that he's had in implementing cloud services for MTN and other businesses, and what benefits we've been able to achieve with those services. So with that, and without further ado, we'll let Alex here take on and present. So thank you for coming.
Okay, thank you. So just as a quick show of hands, how many people here are currently using cloud? Just put your hand up.
It's a fair share.
It's a good size share. How many people use Facebook? How many people use LinkedIn? Gmail? Yahoo Mail? Right? Almost everybody. Actually, unwittingly, we've all been using cloud technology for quite some time. Facebook is actually cloud technology. It's a social collaboration and exchange cloud product. So all of these, much of the technology that we've already gotten used to using on a daily basis is actually cloud technology. But the best way to kind of begin the process is to really understand the classical definition of cloud technology. So we start, hopefully, with a definition. So here's the formal definition. Cloud is a computing model for enabling ubiquitous, convenient, on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources that can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal management effort or service provider interaction. Now that is a mouthful.
Yeah.
And that one is pretty useless for the rest of us. So I have a different definition. Here's my definition. An amorphous, obscuring buzzword used by the entire technology industry to make you think that all the expertise and equipment you already have is worthless and should be replaced with, you guessed it, the cloud. So let's talk about the 5 essential characteristics. We're not going to get too technical here, but I at least want you to get some basic concepts in what really makes up something when it's classified as cloud. The first one is on-demand self-service. And I've highlighted, you can see in the red part, which is really the important part of these definitions. It's a computing capability or service that doesn't require human interaction for you to enable. So one of the key elements of cloud is that the consumer drives the process, not the provider. Broad network access, right? Capabilities are available over the network. That network is almost always the internet. And it's accessible by any type of client platform. Mobile devices, laptops, iPads, thin client terminals, it really makes no difference. One of the characteristics of a cloud service is that it doesn't matter what device you're using to access the service. Resource pooling. The provider's resources are pooled to serve multiple customers. This is a pretty important part of the definition. If you're doing public cloud, you're servicing multiple customers. Your data is going to be sitting on somebody's system with other people's data. That's part of the design of cloud. Generally, it's location independent, meaning you don't know where that data is and you don't really care. It's the cloud provider's problem. Rapid elasticity. The capabilities can be provisioned and released elastically. So they appear to be unlimited to the consumer, right? None of us think about what Google's doing. Google's actually providing a cloud service called indexing and search, right? We've all been using it since the internet became live, right? We don't know how much stuff they have. It just always works. It appears unlimited. And it can be appropriated in any quantity at any time. Think about the power company, right? You plug something in the wall, the power comes out. You add more things, fill up all the watt, the power just keeps coming out. We don't know where it comes from. And essentially, it's unlimited. It's measured. This is also one of the key characteristics of a cloud service. The resource usage is monitored, controlled, and reported on. And this provides both transparency for the provider and for you. They usually bill that way too, so that's generally the way you get the bill. So those are the 5 essential characteristics. No human interaction, it works off of any platform. You're going to be sitting with other people's data. The capabilities appear to be unlimited, and it's going to be monitored and controlled, and you're going to get a report showing how much you're using. That's essentially the 5 characteristics of a cloud service. So, being an IT person, and all of you that have had IT people know we're all pessimists. I lead with my negative foot. Here are the bad parts. Bad part number 1. Ask yourself, do I like any of the telecom carriers? Most people's reaction to telecom carriers starts at hatred and ends with murderous rage. Nobody really likes them very much. They are at the heart of providing cloud services nationwide, and certainly international as well. They also have become some of the largest cloud providers in the country, AT&T being one of them. They host a lot of other people's stuff. So one of the considerations that I always think about is who's providing the service.
Alex, I wanted to see from everybody in the audience here what carriers that they would use at their home and or businesses, just to hear the names of the carriers that we have different carriers that are being used.
Comcast?
Just so long as it's not Comcast.
There we go, murderous rage. Right? AT&T, a lot of people using Uverse. Right? Actually, the carriers now, the wireless carriers actually have an internet service that you can buy with the router where you don't actually have any wires. It's Verizon has that service. So even the wireless carriers are getting in on the fun on providing internet service.
Who here is not from South Florida? Okay. And in your providers? Verizon.
Digicel.
Digicel.
AT&T.
AT&T. Where do you use Digicel?
Turks and Caicos.
Okay. And what type of technology is it? Do you know? Is it DSL?
Fiber,
is it
DSL.
Is it cable? Is it?
It is fiber optic cable provided. Yeah.
But to the home, do you know? Do you use it to your home? Do you have a
Yes.
physical connection, or is it wireless?
It's digital.
It's digital, so it's probably some sort of copper to connect.
No,
it.
it's a fiber.
Well, it's
The
fiber.
business or your, yeah.
How much is your download speaker?
It's very slow. It's only 8 meg up and down.
So it could be some copper.
Sure, could be.
Yeah, I mean, the question is whether they bring it down via satellite to the island or bring it.
They bring it down by
fiber.
satellite. It's got a head end with a satellite that
So
receives.
they have some big latency issues
Yeah,
there.
so exactly.
Yeah,
So do you have-
anything with satellites can have latency.
Do you use VoIP over that service?
Yes.
Do you? And how's the VoIP quality?
Fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, our phone system actually is a least cost routing one, and will route over VoIP as well.
Is it delayed?
Uh,
Is it delayed?
Depends what time of day it is. Can be slightly.
Okay. Just curious, wanted to hear what everybody said and then let you go.
Okay. So second question. You're generally going to be accessing the cloud service via the internet. So one big question is, how reliable is my internet service? This is something that should be a major consideration on cloud, because if you're subscribing to a cloud service and you're without internet, you're dead in the water. Completely dead in the water. How do big companies treat small customers? This is a consideration. The cloud landscape, as we get further along in the presentation, you're going to see the cloud landscape is huge. There's a lot of companies involved in delivering cloud services. So one of the things you want to look at is how these companies treat small customers, because you guys are going to be potentially a small customer, right? You don't have 500 employees, you're not dealing with a $10,000 a month cloud contract. More than likely, it's going to be something relatively small, and there are going to be a lot of you for this one company. So you're going to want to consider how this company treats small customers. What happens if my cloud provider goes bankrupt? This has been I don't know of any specific instances of a cloud provider going bankrupt. Are you aware of any? Not yet. Eventually there will be a shakeout in the cloud space, I have no doubt, because once the space matures and becomes a commoditized space, the guys that can't make it aren't gonna. It's a big question mark, because if the cloud provider essentially stops paying for their internet access wherever they have their stuff, they're going to get cut off. And when they get cut off, your data gets cut off. Getting your data may require lawyers. So this is not a minor issue. And there are some things that you can do, which I'll highlight further on in the presentation, to guard yourself against this.
Let's see, what speeds are people getting with their internet connectivity, just in general? Verizon, what sort of speeds are you seeing with
Verizon?
download and transmit speeds?
Yeah, very quick. They just put the new high speed Fios.
Oh, Fios is really fast.
She's from the north.
Yeah, you're from North Carolina, right?
That's
No,
fiber to the home,
from
right?
Boston.
Yeah.
Oh, from Boston, but yeah.
Plymouth.
Fios is a
Yeah,
fantastic service.
So yeah, so
Yeah,
just
Fios is
Fiber
great.
optics to the home, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, Fios is really good. It's very fast.
Yeah, so what, was it like 100 megs or something?
Yeah, it's supposed to be, I think it's like 25 up, 100 down.
Okay.
But
It's
what are
fast.
people buying for the businesses? You know, it's like that's where
Yeah.
work is.
Right. I don't know, the question really is everybody aware of what speeds they're getting?
Do you know
to
how
their
to find
businesses?
out?
And do you know how to find out? Because it's going to be something that you need to measure when you're determining whether you can.
Appropriateness for cloud.
service.
Right, we'll talk a little bit about how you can, what you should be doing as a business if you're considering going to cloud.
yeah, because that's how I was measuring, and then I called Verizon and said, hey, it's very slow, and then they said, well, would you consider Fios? I said, yes. Next day it was like day and night.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Fios is fast.
Yeah.
So, oh, I did skip one. Will my data ever be used without my knowledge? Unfortunately, all of the cloud providers in the country have not done a very good job of establishing a reputation for not letting your data end up in somebody's hands that wasn't supposed to get a hold of it. And we were just talking, and mostly we've just been talking about email addresses, phone numbers, that kind of thing. We haven't talked about any data that could really be mined for something useful or for something juicy. So to me, this is one of the major considerations of going to cloud. Will the government have unrestricted access if they want? The answer is yes. And don't kid yourself. In fact, I don't know how many people have been watching, but Google, Facebook, and a whole bunch of other vendors have been really complaining to the government because part of the testimony that came out from Edward Snowden was that the NSA was involved in hacking companies that didn't even know they were being hacked to get at people's data. So the reality is if you need to secure your data from the government, then you need to be thinking about that very carefully in terms of what you want to do with cloud. If possession is 9/10 of the law, is 1/10 enough for me? Somebody else is going to have your data. That's what most of this boils down to. And this is a consideration that I think everybody needs to fully think through and accept as part of the cloud deal. You're marrying somebody, and they're going to have your data. And by now, probably feeling a little sick. I told you I was going to leave with my negative foot. Here comes the dance, right? Here's the positive side. So with all these negatives, why would we go cloud? Why cloud? What would you do right now if your office burned down? 60% of businesses that have a fire that burns their office down are gone in 12 months. Bankrupt. Because they can't get their office back together. Or they have a catastrophic data loss. Imagine trying to rebuild your business right now with no accounts receivable, no accounting data, no contact information, all your email gone. That's essentially what can happen if you don't have your backup somewhere else. What would I do if a big hurricane struck South Florida? This has more to do with those of us that are local to South Florida. Turks has the same issue.
Goes on up the Northeast coast.
Goes all, well, yeah. I was going to say, actually, New York had their own little episode recently with this. A typical hurricane event in South Florida, a serious hurricane event, is going to remove infrastructure everywhere in South Florida for 6 weeks. You're not going to have power, you're not going to have phones, except cell phones. But you won't have power, you won't have air conditioning. Those of us that were here with Andrew know what it was like.
Has anybody here experienced a disaster and or data loss or, yeah? Did you care to talk about it?
Well, I had a flood.
You had a flood? Did you
It was
lose?
water, it's amazing. It's just like,
Did you lose data?
I lost some, I lost some computers. I was okay on that, but I'll just, frankly, the thing that really caught me up by surprise was just, it's like 6 months later, I'm still depressed. I mean, it was just like the emotional, people, it's just, losing
It's
stuff.
tough.
Man,
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
tough.
like,
You lost data that you can't replace? Is it
oh yeah,
affect your
yeah.
business?
Well, just to put down the whole, I mean, I don't know how people move back into a house after it's been flooded. I mean, I just don't know how to do it. We got enough for the business. All your personal belongings, the water just, oof.
Yeah, it damages everything.
Oh, man.
You might as well just gut the place and
Yeah,
literally
it's-
redo it almost.
I know other people in New Orleans. We had friends, we did work for Trinity and we're involved.
Oh wow, yeah, that was unbelievable. Katrina, that was unbelievable. I mean, that was on a much larger scale. That was horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I just had, 18 inches of water in the building. That's all it took to.
Caused big problems.
Your computers were most understood on the floor.
Your computers, yes, it shows, yeah.
Christina, did you have any issues with all the storms that were flying through the
Yeah,
Northeast this
we
year?
had a power outage of 5 days because of, it was MIMO or whatever it was.
The
involved.
first big storm, 5 days, wow.
Something like that.
Curious, when you had that power outage for 5 days, did your cell phone service also suffer? Because here
No.
in Florida, when we had one of the hurricanes, my cell phone service stayed wonderfully up all night, and the next morning, it seems they ran out of batteries.
Yeah.
And then
No,
I
and
lost.
well, we had a strategy first. We had 2 cars outside so we could charge them, and we had a generator. Once the generator, but at that time I didn't have a generator. So I was in line at Home Depot the 4th
Trying to
day.
get one.
I bought a generator, so after 4 days, I decided to buy a generator, and the power came back the next day. But I could work again because you don't do anything without power.
So
but
we
the cell
actually
phone-
run a data center at Palmetto Bay Village Center building in Dade, which is the old Burger King building for those of you that have some knowledge of South Florida. That building has about 20 cell phone antennas on it because there's no tall buildings around that area of town, so all the cell phone companies have their cell phone antennas on that building. Well, that building, all of the data feeds and all the fiber feeds that run the cell phone tower on top of the building come into our suite, which is the DMARC for the building. The batteries in there are good for 24 hours, and then there's no more cell phones.
Yeah.
So if power goes out for longer than 20, now the building has a generator, but post-storm, there's no way to know whether the generator will work.
Well,
So
then
it's
you-
very
then you
easy
have-
to end up
and
in
then-
that
And then
situation.
you run out of gas, and the gas stations don't have power.
Oh, there's no
so-
gas. These would be diesel, and once they're out, they're out.
Yeah.
You need a huge tanker to come fill it up. They have big underground tanks.
How many of you back up your data in your businesses on a monthly basis,
Weekly.
weekly, daily?
Daily.
Where do you store your backups?
My IT guy has it set up
Is it
offsite.
off-site? Is it out of state?
I send it to Brazil.
See, you said there, my IT guy has it set up.
Yeah.
Okay, so for business owners out there, you you need to know more than that.
Yeah.
Right.
You need to
I
know
think
where
my
the
one
IT guy is
dip
sending
in the
it.
cloud is Carbonite. I've been hugely happy.
Carbonite's great.
Carbonite's an
Carbonite's
awesome
great.
cloud product.
Yeah, it's really good. The only, I'll talk a little bit about the negatives to Carbonite, and there are really none other than the fact that those of us that have larger infrastructure want that infrastructure to be restorable quickly. And Carbonite will give you files back, fantastic. You know, it's
Yeah,
great
I
for
use
files.
Carbonite
Right,
too.
but the difficulty gets when you start to have either server or server-based services that become more difficult to back up.
But I use Carbonite and the backup in Brazil.
That's fantastic. And Carbonite's cheap. That's the best part. I mean, it's really inexpensive.
Well, their phone app is just made, it's just game changing. I mean, I can just go and hit any file on my PC right now and email somebody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Somebody calls me up and they need a file.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's great.
As long
It is.
as you know, as long as you don't mind other people saying,
Yeah.
Exactly, but.
Cool.
How can I connect all of my offices to my data? One of the big leveraging angles of cloud is if you're a geo-distributed company. Companies that have more than 5 offices that are separated by coasts, separated by country, cloud offers some very, very unique capabilities that are hard to replicate any other way. You can replicate them other ways, it's just very expensive. How can I keep my mobile workers mobile? This even applies to business owners because we like to stay, if any of us have jobs that involve sales, we want to be able to work wherever we are. We don't want to be tied to an office or to our homes. We want to be able to pop a laptop open, connect up to Wi-Fi, and work just as if we're sitting at our desk. And that's one of the things that cloud does really well. How do I lower my capital cost of IT? For probably the majority of smaller companies, this is somewhat less of an issue because they're generally not refreshing their IT, maybe more than once every 4 years, and it's relatively affordable. For larger companies, this is not only a large expense, it's a very large capital expense. We have customers that we do $140,000 projects every 24 months. So they have a very large budget and their capital expenditure on equipment is large because of the type of company they are. And one way you can really reduce that and schedule it out over a longer period of time and make it much more flexible so that you only get charged for what you're using is by using cloud, and we'll get there. How do I reduce the risk of system downtime? This is a big one. If you got your servers in your office and the power goes out, you're down. If you got your servers in your office and the internet goes down, you're down. So if you have workers that are remote that need, or offices that are remote that need to access this data, it's going to depend on wherever the servers are or wherever that data is for that to be reliable. And the cloud manufacturers have got this part knocked down. They've got redundant power, they've got redundant data centers, they've got generators, they've got redundant internet connections. Their uptime is the best in the industry. And now you're probably sick and confused because there are good parts and there are bad parts. All right. So let's talk about some questions. First question is, where are these guys sitting on clouds? No, that's not the real question. What type of cloud services are available? So we're going to talk a little bit about the different kinds of services that are available in the cloud. What do they cost? Can I migrate slowly over time? Which cloud provider should I choose? And do I still need IT support? And what is the meaning of life? I'm not going to answer that one yet. All right, so let's talk a little bit about cloud services. So this is the most complex technical slide that I'm going to have in the presentation. And I do this because I really want people to begin to understand the words in the industry, because when you go out to start looking at this, you're going to see these words, and as business owners, you're going to want to kind of understand them. You might want to shut the lights off because my red didn't show up too good here at the bottom, which of course is the most important one. All right, so we're all, that would be perfect. So we're all familiar with running an application on our PCs, right? We double click on Word, Word opens up, we say File Open, and a list of documents comes up, we select the document, we click on the document, boom, the document's sitting there in Word. That's an application delivery. The application is physically running locally on your PC, called Microsoft Word, and it's opening up and bringing data in from some other location. Could be on your local hard disk, could be on a server in your office, Could be up in the internet, you don't really know where the document is, and that document appears so that you can edit it and work on it in Word. At the most basic layer, to deliver any type of service, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, makes no difference what kind of service you're delivering as a cloud service. There are components that make up part of that service. So let's talk about the first component, bottom level, right? First thing you need is electricity, because you're going to have to plug something in. Servers have to be plugged in. So the first thing you need is what we call the data center, or the mechanical layer, which essentially is air conditioning and electricity for computers. What's the next layer up? Networking and firewall, right? You've got to connect it to the internet. If other people are going to access it, it has to be connected to the internet. So this first layer here, the electrical layer, this is the first thing that you need if you want to deliver a computer service. Next layer up, networking and firewall, you got to connect it to a network so people can access it. Third layer, right? Servers. Got to buy servers. How many people have a Dell server? Anybody have a Dell server? Anybody ever seen a Dell server? How many Dell servers do you have?
Not very many.
HPs. HPs is an HP shop, it's not a Dell shop. Right? So you got to have a machine to put the data on that's going to deliver the data when somebody asks for it. Next layer up, virtualization layer. Not going to spend too much time on this, but this is a company, the big companies, one of the, probably the biggest one in the industry, called VMware. This piece allowed these cloud providers to run multiple servers on one piece of hardware. That's what that virtualization layer is. So this first piece, and you can see this is infrastructure as a service, called IaaS. You're going to see three terms in this industry: IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. Everything you've been using to this point has been software as a service. Somebody's delivering a fully complete application to you over the internet, like Facebook. I want you to at least be familiar with these so that you know when you're looking at a cloud service what infrastructure as a service is, platform as a service, and software as a service. So this first layer, these four are infrastructure as a service. That's the infrastructure needed to deliver a cloud service. The next two pieces up here are platform added onto. When you add these two on, it becomes platform as a service. And the only thing you're adding on there is the operating system, right? So and some application software. So if you put Windows on it and you add an application, now it's platform as a service. If you want to deliver software as a service, it's the whole kit and caboodle. And that's really the only difference between these three things. Infrastructure is the first four layers. Platform, two more layers. Software, the software at the top. And there you are all the way at the top, clicking on your iPad. So the companies that are utilizing infrastructure as a service are companies that already had IT infrastructure, and they're replacing it with infrastructure in the cloud. That's why it's called infrastructure as a service. The people that use platform as a service are software developers. So they have a platform that they can actually develop on. Everybody else, all of us, including me, most of us, we're all using it software as a service. Meaning that some cloud providers providing us a fully built application, we connect to it on the internet with our browser or our iPad, and it works. So that's what we're really going to focus on today. And let's talk a little bit about the big software as a service vendors. Anybody here know who Office 365 is? Office 365, right? We all use, how many people use Microsoft Office? Right, we all use Microsoft Office, right? Word, Excel, Outlook, and PowerPoint, one of the things I'm using right now, right? Microsoft has a cloud service for that. It's called Office 365. They're the ones that wrote the software, and they're the ones now providing the service. They're a very large cloud provider, as you can well imagine, right? GoToMeeting. Anybody here use GoToMeeting? Right? Software as a service. That's a meeting and collaboration platform. You just connect to it over the internet, and it lets you run meetings. So these are some of these software as a service vendors, right? They're providing great products that all of us are using already. For those of you that do CRM and sales, Salesforce.com. Anybody here is familiar with Salesforce.com? Right? That's another software as a service. So that's what we're going to really focus on. most of you are not infrastructure providers or software developers, so we're going to focus on software as a service. But I want you to know those terms.
So I use the Office 365, and I like it. I was a big fan of it. And it's tied into, I think, what was called SkyDrive, now OneDrive.
Yes.
Are they the same? Is that the same product?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. New marketing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was really what I wanted to get out of this. We don't want to spend too much time on this, but I do want you to know those three little terms, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, because you're going to see the cloud people use those terms, and I just want you to have a general idea of what the differences are. And we're really going to be SaaS. Cost. Let's talk a little bit about cost. Typically, one, cloud services are going to cost you less capital up front because you're not buying equipment and you're not buying software licenses. You're paying on a monthly basis. So in looking closely at the cost, you have to weigh how long you would normally keep that infrastructure before it would need to be replaced if you owned the infrastructure versus what it costs you as a monthly recurring cost to do it as a cloud. You can see that typically cloud comes out to be less expensive, but it does depend on the type of cloud service you're buying and how long you look. In general, I would tell you that cost should not be the driver. I think there can be significant cost savings looking at cloud, but generally I would say that if you're thinking about making the decision to go to cloud or to use something in the cloud, the decision should really be based upon the things that are important and the differences between premise equipment and cloud equipment. But I want you to at least have a general idea that cloud generally comes out less expensive, but that cannot always be the case.
I'm not sure everybody can read that slide, so I may need to identify what is what.
Right, so this slide is a $60,000 licensing fee, and then an additional $6,000 a year. Yeah, $6,000 a year. So this is a software as a service looking at premise deployment of a $60,000 application versus a cloud deployment. And what the 9-year cost is, total cost of ownership, paying for it in the cloud or paying for it if you deployed it yourself.
Which it looks to be about the same.
It's close. It crosses over at year 9.
In year 9.
In years 1 through 8, you're in a better situation under the software as a service.
Right. So the red line is software as a service. I don't know if everybody can see it. The red line is software as a service.
This guy's this is your software as a service line cost, and this is your premise cost.
Right.
You can see they touch each other at about year 9. So there is a cost driver involved in cloud, there's no question. But to me, and as I've consulted with my small business clients, generally I try to find a reason other than strictly cost to do the cloud move.
So Alex, I mean, how efficient is it to hold on to hardware for 9 years?
No, this is including a 36-month replacement cycle.
Oh, okay, it does.
Three replacement cycles.
Okay, all right.
So, what does a migration look like? And I'm glad that we have an Office 365 user, because that's one of the ones I used. So, software as a service. So let's talk about Office 365. A typical Office 365 project is usually 2 to 4 weeks for a small business. It's anywhere from 40 to 60 hours of project labor to move all your email, all your documents into Office 365 so that you can use Office 365 and not use your local server anymore or your local workstation to host your Word documents, Excel documents, PowerPoint documents, and Outlook in your email. Pretty typical for a small business.
And they're in both locations too, right? They're local and...
They will be only at the point where your cutover occurs. Once your cutover occurs, you don't have a local copy anymore. You can keep it as a backup, but it won't be getting updated anymore. In other words, every time you update a document, a Word document, it updates on Office 365, but it doesn't update locally on the device.
Really? Well, I feel like I should have known that already.
I think it depends on whether you have it. I mean, you could have a hybrid deployment, but a lot of times when people move, they move all the way.
Sure.
Typically, unless there was a reason that you wouldn't, and I'm going to talk about this when we get to backups, but I'm with you in that, to me, it still is important to maintain a separate backup other than what's in the cloud. And we've actually had Office 365 users who lost data, and Microsoft said, sorry,
Yeah.
It's not there,
Check the box.
right? Check the box.
Yeah.
Read your disclaimer.
Right. Normally, an Office 365 is what we call a knife edge cutover, which means one Friday night at 6 p.m., you're accessing all your documents locally, and when you come in Monday morning, everything's now in the cloud. So it's not a staged migration. We call it a knife edge or cutover migration. Office 365 requires good internet connectivity or a dedicated point-to-point. This should be a consideration for you, because right now, if you need to edit documents on your laptop, you just need you don't need internet. You could be anywhere and edit documents. The moment you put all your stuff on Office 365, if you're without internet, you're without documents. Another good example, cloud, VoIP, right? There's a bunch of good hosted VoIP manufacturers now who offer a cloud service, meaning you put a phone on your desk, but you don't own a phone system. That phone connects to a phone system somewhere up in the cloud, right? So a typical deployment for a VoIP, and we've done a bunch of these, is 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the complexity of your phone system. For under 20 user companies, you could do one in probably 2 days.
I'm sorry, what is VoIP? I'm sorry.
Voice over Internet Protocol is what it stands for. So essentially, here's what happens. Right now, if you have a traditional phone system, right, you have a phone on your desk, has a wire, goes back to a closet. Inside that closet, you see a box, which is your phone system.
Right.
Your telecom carrier provides you with dial tone, usually on little copper wires. Sometimes it could be T1 if you're a bigger company, but essentially, your telephone carrier provides you with a wire that comes into the same place. You connect that into your phone system, and that's how all your phones work.
Got it. Yeah,
Right.
I know which one.
Right, so these guys said, well, you know what? We don't need to have people with phone systems anymore. What we'll do is they'll connect their phones up to the internet,
Yeah.
and their phones will work over our phone switch, which is somewhere else. All of us that have used Vonage, there's a bunch of services now that
Yeah.
operate this way.
Where's your fax machine?
You can, actually, you can fax on them. Faxing is one of the things that's gotten a lot better in the last 2 years. It was one of the big challenges in the beginning, that faxing didn't work great. But one, a lot of companies aren't even faxing very much anymore. And two, we've been able to get faxing pretty reliable with the right, if you have the right VoIP provider, you can fax. So typically this is a 1 to 2 week deployment. It varies depending on the complexity, but, and here's the big but, you want highly reliable internet, because if you lose your internet access, you've lost phones, which is a bigger problem for most businesses, particularly businesses that really depend on their phones. A lot of smaller businesses, their customers have their cell phone number, so if they call and they can't get through, they're going to call you on your cell phone. But for a lot of businesses, that main number can't be down. So if you want to make this jump to VoIP, you definitely need highly reliable internet access.
I just wanted to know, Kais has set up we do VoIP services. It's one of the things MTN does.
So it's voice, but we also did Office 365, right? In Office 365 migration, we had full Exchange in our house, where we had multiple Exchange servers dealing with mailboxes for all of our end users. The challenge becomes lots of things. You've got drive space. We used to have these crazy things where every month we had a maintenance schedule, and in it we did mail deletion. We're deleting mail longer than X number of months. And we would warn people and we'd say do archiving and this and that. And you don't have to do that anymore. I mean, it's like with Office 365, they give each user 25 gigs of space. However, if you don't do the practice of archiving or backups, then if it is lost, usually if it gets lost, it's not because your provider did something, it's because the end user that has the control over the account accidentally deleted something or related to that. If you have backups going to your local machines and you've got that carbonite, then you've saved yourself. In our case, we had a lot of gear. We had multiple servers. We had terabytes of storage. And all of that costs money, right? You know, at the end of the day, when you move over to a cloud provider, these cloud providers are so inexpensive. If you went the Gmail route, you're paying $5 per user per month. And if you go the Office 365 route, it could be as low or up to $20 depending on how what services you want. And again, those are retail rates. If most of you have 20 or more people working at your office, most likely you have some kind of an open licensing agreement. and there you're able to get some kind of a discount because you're already paying for your licenses. Take advantage of that, by the way. If you do have licenses, make sure you're talking to your providers to find out, I'm already paying for this. I don't want to pay the full retail price. Usually there is a way of talking and getting that down. Again, one of the advantages of working through a consultant, you know, through someone like Alex's company, is they know what's possible. You know, you don't have to be going out trying to say that, let's try this. You know, that they're your trusted advisor, or there are many people out there that know how other deployments have gone. They know what was painful, that they'll help make your deployment really easy. In our organization, we have people that are trained, and we still went with an outside company to help us with our migration. It just makes things easier.
Yeah, and I can see with smaller companies too, there's probably a lot of start and stop and implementations that didn't work completely, and then try something else, and now the data is scattered over 2 different services or whatever. By going out and find someone who knows what they're doing up front.
And the cloud guys got a bad rap in the beginning. Part of the reason they got a bad rap in the beginning because they realized somewhere along the way that they needed help getting people to do the implementation. Because if an implementation fails with a company, it can fail for a lot of reasons. Usually it's the company that ends up failing on the implementation. It's not always the cloud provider. But then the cloud provider gets a bad name because somebody's out there saying, oh, we had a terrible experience with Office 365, we backed off of it, and then all of a sudden you've got this net, you know, that you get a reputation, a negative reputation for providing a service. So it is, you know, it's always been important in the industry, and I think particularly for business owners, to be able to trust somebody to say, is this right? How do we do it? Okay, let's go. You know, and then you've got somebody else who's really taking responsibility for making the project succeed.
So when you migrate to 365, can you migrate just your mail hosting portion? Or,
absolutely.
So you wouldn't have to do your entire.
Correct. You can just do email.
So when you do the migration, if I walked into my server space, would I see nothing now?
No, you would probably, well, first of all, you'd still need servers to host all your documents. So you'd still have some kind of file servers there to handle documents that are being shared because the only thing you're moving is your email.
What if I did everything? What if I moved everything?
What else do you have running on those servers?
Good question.
Right? You probably have a line of you may have a line of business app, for example. Let's say you use QuickBooks to your account.
Okay, so you have
you
the
probably
accounting
don't,
software
but
or something.
right, you have accounting software. Some of the accounting software providers are now offering their.
Yeah, we're actually going to switch, and we're looking at clouding all of our accounting software. So I'm thinking, does it make sense to take documents and so what I have accounting software, I've got documents, and I've got email.
Okay, so let's talk about the couple of applications that do not cloud well.
There you go.
If you're handling anything involving video or high resolution photographs, that's not going to the cloud. Won't work. You got to have very, very, very high speed between your PC and the device that's maintaining those files for them to be workable. So if you're doing advertising work, you're doing video editing, those do not cloud. You can't cloud. So those are 2 places where you cannot take the application and move it to the cloud. Generally speaking, very, very high transaction I/O applications, unless the cloud provider has the infrastructure to carry it, are not going to move well to the cloud. You need to be very careful with any application where there is a guaranteed response time. In other words, the application has to respond within the right amount of time. Those applications are difficult to move to the cloud. You can, but you need to be real careful moving it. So it would just depend on what other apps you're using, but in the best case scenario, right, you don't have any of those type of apps and you essentially moved everything to the cloud. So here's what your office looks like. Your office still has network switches because you got to connect up somebody's device, or go all wireless, which I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah.
So you've still got either PCs or thin client terminals or something that you're going to use to actually access the service, right? So you've got some network switches, still going to need a firewall. You're still going to need, if those devices are Windows-based devices, they're going to need antivirus software. You're still going to have cabling in the office, so the network portion of your network is still going to need to be maintained, other than the servers.
Right. Wow, that's a big change.
It's a big change. Yeah, you're essentially
another-
your
yeah.
data physically doesn't sit at your site anymore.
No,
So you have.
it's very nerve-wracking.
Or
Yeah, I-
relief.
Exactly, I think
Both
you
ways.
say nerve-wracking, but, and it is, but if you think back, 10 years ago, and then where we came in 5 years, and all these companies, the cloud-driven companies, are all being produced by the largest companies, the Googles, the Facebook, they're already all running on that, and so, 2 or 3 years from now, this conversation is gonna be much, much different, because
It's
almost
changed
everything-
dramatically in
and that's
2
how
years.
fast it's gonna happen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because this is where everybody's gonna move to eventually.
Alex, are you
No
open?
different than a CD that moved to a little
Yeah.
drive to now that won't even be a drive anymore. And even with the voice, what we do with our phones is we just then roll it to a cell phone so that if there ever was a power outage, you're still receiving your voice calls.
If you look at, if you want to conceptualize what the cloud is, if you look at, go back five, well, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, actually, if anybody remembers using, when first Ethernet networks came out, and, you're getting, I guess you're getting that 10 megabits per second first, right?
Yeah.
So you're getting 10 megabits per second connectivity between your PC and your server, right, with the client-server architecture. But if you had large files on your server that you were storing, and you were trying to open them up on your PC, even if it was not, if you remember how long it would take to open those files and bring it back. Now hence the pictures, the large pictures, if you wanted to get a big picture, it'd take a while to get it off the server. Ethernet's come a long way. It's now up to 100, is that the gigabit per second?
10 gig.
10 gigabit per
Although
second.
not to the desktop.
Not
I
to,
mean,
okay. So,
current companies are all gigabit to the desktop.
and then and the internet speeds have then increased now from 64K back in the AOL dial-up days to now to the Fios, right? The Verizon Fios at 100 megs per second. So you're now getting the speeds to the internet that you were between your PC and your server. Hence why we're able to move all that stuff off the server in the office to the cloud with big providers like Google and whatnot. But it all is dependent upon the speed you can communicate to the internet, which
The big driving force behind making cloud work and for everybody is going to be high speed, available, inexpensive internet access.
And I also think, like you are in the business and I am in the business, the softwares, I use Autodesk. So now, instead of having your farms, renderings, your drawings, you just send it to Autodesk and you tell me render for 5 hours because I have a meeting and send it back to me. So it's unbelievable. I don't need to invest anymore in more computers.
Sure, and rendering technology.
Because my software already includes that service.
Gotcha.
So that's so cool too, that now you can do that with the cloud.
Any service where any service that that utilizes CPU and memory and large amounts of storage space, but doesn't require super high speed connectivity, is perfectly positioned for cloud, which is what she's talking about, right?
Yeah.
She used to have to render an architectural drawing, might take 2 hours because the machines that she was using, she had to use a cluster of small machines that each of them did a little bit of the task, and it took 2 hours to render her architectural drawing, the 9 layers of her architectural drawing. She can now send that architectural drawing out, in essence, electronically send it to the company that wrote the software, and they have a huge farm of machines, and they schedule it into their farm, and she gets the results back afterwards. So she doesn't have to invest in that technology.
The productivity that the cloud provides, the efficiency of productivity is incredible. It's so nice to be able to be anywhere in the world and be able to go onto a tablet or your phone and bring up the document
And share it.
and share it. Share it or just refer to it. I used to have to bring all this stuff to the trade shows with all this documentation to back up that I paid for this and I did this and I sent this to so-and-so and when did they get it? But now it's all on my phone. I lost my tablet, which is the only thing I travel with as a computer now, the first day of the Monaco show. I still had my phone and all of my documents were on the cloud.
How
And I did
secure is
everything
it?
that way.
All right, hold on, we'll get there.
The reason why I ask is, I work for a law firm. We have a certain level of confidentiality to the client to make sure their data or their information is secure.
There are a lot of things that can be done to create a very, very secure cloud computing environment. To answer your question very straightforwardly, most of the issues related to the security of that data are not going to be visible to you. You're not going to know the answer. Because the big security risk, some of the same security risks exist whether the data is sitting on your server in your office or whether the data is sitting on a server in the cloud, right? If you end up with an infected PC, it's an infected PC.
Correct.
Whether the data is in the cloud or whether the data is in your office makes absolutely no difference, right? So a lot of the effort that we make on the security side still has to be made because we're dealing with client computing devices, iPads, workstations, laptops. Those devices are inherently insecure by design. So there's a lot of things we have to do to secure those devices. The bigger question is how secure is your data at the cloud provider?
And Alex, one of the things I wanted to just add to that, though, is that, you know, we talked a little while ago about can the government get access to your data? Sure they can. Guess what? They can get access to the data that's in your home network without going into your office.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can go to your internet provider, and if they have the right grounds with a subpoena, they're going to have a tap going in, and most of your data either comes in from the outside or it's created and you send it out. So data security, it's really, I think that you've got to come to terms with it and come up with it. You'll put the proper controls around it, work with a provider that'll help you put the right controls around it, and then live with it.
And there are things you can do, and there are services that the cloud providers are already providing to make your data essentially unusable to anyone else.
That's
So
nice to know.
we'll talk about
Yeah,
that.
encryption.
Yeah.
With Office
I think over the next
365.
over the next 2-3 years, encrypted material encryption technology will just become another add-on, if you will, that you'll buy if you're a law firm and such. And so any of your data coming or going will then immediately be encrypted. And, yeah.
Nice, yeah.
Okay, so when I said that I wasn't kidding about how big the cloud landscape is, don't even bother trying to read any of them, but and this is, I think, 7 or 8 months old already. So this is just to give you a general idea. By category, we have CRM on the left, marketing demand generation, HR, finance and accounting, content management, verticals, enterprise social media, marketing analytics, e-commerce, collaboration, business intelligence. The list is endless. This is the future of software and software delivery.
Alex, one sec on that slide. One thing I want to just mention on this slide is it's too big. There's too much stuff out there. A lot of things you don't know what's possible, and if what you don't know, you don't know. That's again when it comes handy to go to a consultant, to go to a trade show that's offering those things that you care about. You know, so if it's CRM, go to something related to CRM, and you'll see all the other products that help you in that space. There's too many things. I mean, when we were talking, we talked about Carbonite, we talked about Concur, and there's like almost everything in there. It's like, oh wow, we could probably use that.
It's amazing, and there's 100 coming out every month that you won't find out about until they've made enough of a market share that people begin to know who they are.
Absolutely. You know, so Concur, which I did mention. Most of us, you're out here, you're probably going to go home and you're going to have to fill out an expense report.
How about you didn't show the apps?
Well, that's some of the apps that are.
I'm getting there, I swear.
But
No,
with the expense report, though, with Concur, you can take a photo of your receipt, and it'll route it to your manager, and once your manager approves it, it'll route it to get paid. There are so many other tools out there that help you in saving hours in the day, that you, again, if you don't have advice from someone, you're not even going to know it exists.
You're right.
All right, so let's talk about choosing a provider. These are some thoughts that you should have, questions that you would want to ask, particularly if you're thinking about moving infrastructure that's active business to a cloud provider. A lot of times, this is an easy decision, right? If you're on QuickBooks and you want to use QuickBooks in the cloud, the easiest thing to do is use Intuit's QuickBooks Online, right? The software manufacturer has a service. So it's pretty easy to make that determination. You're not going to try to recreate it or have to use it with somebody else. Same thing with Office 365. There were a lot of other companies that started out doing hosted Exchange for hosted Outlook for email. They're pretty much all gone. Microsoft killed them all because most people are like, well, they wrote the software, they probably know best. So, which is essentially what's happened. So, one of the things that I would normally ask is, where's the data? The key here is it better be geodiverse. meaning it shouldn't be in the state where you are. The goal here is to make sure that if your state gets wiped out, one of the big advantages of cloud is that it's not where you are, it's somewhere else. So if you have a major disaster in your city, right, or in your geography, you don't want it to affect your cloud service.
How do you even know where it is?
Well, in many cases, most of the cloud providers will show you a diagram of their data center layout, and you'll see that their data centers are, that they have 5 or 4. And they have one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast.
Is your data spread across those?
They usually mirror the data elsewhere so that they can rapidly re-provision everybody's services to a different data center if they need to. This is an important one. I think this is a good question that really should be asked. I bump into customers all the time who've used the same technology that these cloud providers are using to build what's called a private cloud. Well, what's the only difference? Private cloud, you use the same software, same servers, same everything to create your own internal private cloud. And then they host it at the Napa of the Americas in downtown Miami. I'm thinking to myself, your office is in Miami. What do you think is going to happen if there's a hurricane here? You think the NAP's going to continue to operate? Move it to Atlanta. Get it out of your state.
That's a pretty secure facility.
It is a really secure facility. I agree with you. It's a level 5 secure facility. But here's my problem. My problem is the Greenberg Chord building, when we got hit by a Category 1 storm, which is a pretty small storm, there were client files from Greenberg Chord all over downtown Miami. So the question is, will it take a tornado? Because when Andrew came through, those of us that remember Andrew, the concrete hardened aircraft shelters at Homestead Air Force Base, which were supposed to be able to take a nuclear blast, right, where they parked the F-16s, Andrew took them. They disappeared. We don't know what happened to them. They never found the pieces of the hardened aircraft shelters. So we know that around the core of that hurricane, there were a lot of tornadoes. So the difficulty is, to me, the NAP's great. It's a really good facility, but if I'm going to put my stuff, if I'm going to make the effort to put it in the cloud, I'm thinking geodiverse. I want it out of my city. What is the process if I switch providers? This is a real good question to ask, particularly if there isn't just one provider of the service, right? If you're doing it QuickBooks Online, there's only one provider. It's Intuit. But if the service that you're looking at using, there's a bunch of providers for, ask the question up front, if I decide to switch providers, what does my process look like? Because you're going to have to get all of your data off of the cloud provider and move it to a different cloud provider. I have done this for probably about 5 or 6 clients already, and it's an ugly process that typically arguments are made initially about money, which you're not going to get much of an argument because they own your data. So if there's an argument about money, you're not going to have access to it, so you're going to have to pay whatever they're asking to get your data off of their service. And if it's a lot of data, it's a complex cut and it can cause downtime. So this is something that I would find out about ahead of time.
Yes, we're running short on time.
I see.
So,
All right.
Okay.
if we could make some of the main points.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
No problem. How good is their tech support? A good question to ask, you're going to need to know because you're going to need it. Do they have customer references? Always good to get if you can. Obviously, the big guys, you're not going to get one from Office 365, but on a smaller one, you might. How do they bill, and what's their SLA, service level agreement? What are they guaranteeing is the uptime of their service? And what are they going to do for you if the service is not? How long have they been in business? I think this is any time that you're putting critical service with somebody. You should ask that question. Okay, IT support. This is the big myth. Cloud companies would have you believe, or many of them would have you believe, that you don't need IT support. If you're planning on continuing to print, you're going to need IT support because they're not providing you with cloud printers. Does your office still need to be networked? You bet. Will you still need application support? Outlook will continue to have issues because it's Outlook. It doesn't matter whether the data is your Exchange server or Office 365. So if you need support in an application, the cloud provider is not going to provide you with support in the application. Will you still need portable device support? We spend probably 25% of our consulting hours helping customers get the next phone that they bought working correctly, or the next iPad that they got working correctly. Do you still need to control internet access? You bet. Absolutely. As a business owner, you definitely should. You should not have your employees with open internet. It's a security risk, and it's a productivity issue. Will there be viruses in the cloud? I would guarantee it. Do you still need to back up your data? You're going to get conflicting guides to this. I say yes. I think you still need to have a separate backup that's not at your cloud provider. So what are some SMB cloud providers? One of the big, good, solid cloud services for small businesses, anti-spam. If you're going to run your own email infrastructure, Barracuda Networks and McAfee are two great companies that provide cloud-based anti-spam for your mail server. Office suites, right? Office 365 and Google Apps, two big boys. Those are the 800-pound gorillas in the cloud space. CRM, Salesforce.com. Accounting for the small business space, Intuit. Backups, we talked about Carbonite, great product. Mozy, another competitor of Carbonite's, and a company called Shadow Protect, which provides full server backups to the cloud. Wireless, you guys probably never even heard of this company, Meraki. They got bought by Cisco. They provide wireless access points where you manage the entire wireless network in the cloud. Very cool product. Makes for deploying enterprise class wireless networks simple, and they used to not be. VoIP, Vocalocity, ShoreTel Sky, Digium, there's a bunch of these. This is just a small list. And this is the future of telecommunications. So conclusions. I would look at anything offered in the SaaS model. If it's software as a service, it's worth looking at, because you don't have to do anything except need a client computing device to utilize the service. VoIP, but you need ultra-reliable internet if you're going to do VoIP. VoIP is fantastic, but you need really good internet. If you have good infrastructure in place right now, there's no rush. You don't have to be in the cloud tomorrow to keep up. I know that the urgency seems to be building, but if you have good infrastructure, there's no rush. The best time to do your cloud migration is if you're considering a major upgrade, because you're already getting ready to spend a bunch of capital. That's the best time to think about a cloud upgrade. Temporary computing resources are a test lab. This doesn't apply to almost anybody here, but it's one of the things that cloud's really good at. And I say your cloud location, if you're going to be a Florida business, I would probably choose to put my cloud location somewhere outside of Florida. And that's it.
Also, just to let you know, I was talking to Kitty and Julie, and they're going to try to put all of the presentations that have been done throughout the entire summit on a cloud-based server so that everybody will have access to it. So we're hoping to get any handouts and things of that nature put somewhere where all the members will be able to retrieve them later after the summit's over.
Dropbox, right?
We're hoping Dropbox.
Dropbox is great. I actually didn't put it on here, and I should have.
Does anybody have any
Dropbox is
questions?
fantastic. Do you guys have any questions that you want to hit the whole panel with?